Welcome back from the sneak peek and the break, and we are talking about recognizing ourselves or identity today. And what does that mean? I mean, does it mean personal identity? Does it mean national identity? Does it mean identity as a human being? And all of that's pretty debatable in this world now, isn't it? Well, we have Zaheer Kidvai in the studio with us today, one of our favorite guests. Hi, Zach.
Hi.
And thank you so much for taking the time out again to come in and talk to us.
Welcome.
What is identity?
What is identity is what you choose to make it mean. For example, we have this misnomer of this little card that we carry, which should really be the national identification card and not the national identity card.
Such a good point.
Right. I mean, you know, it's the equivalent of going into, say, in America, going to a bank and says, prove your identity. You take out your driver's license, your American Express card, your social security card, your passport, or a Pakistani identity card. I don't know whether they recognize our identity card there as such because it's in Urdu, but so you need probably a translation. But that's what the equivalent of. Even here in this country, it doesn't give you my identity. It certainly doesn't say poet, writer, musician, singer, lover, whatever else I may be, is not there. My personality is not reflected. The identity has to do with some form little more than just identification. So I really hope that the national identification card will become the national identity card soon. I mean, the other way around, sorry.
Absolutely,
So, so that aside, what is identity? It depends on circumstances again. I mean, if I landed in America at the airport and I had to prove my identity, it would be as a Pakistani, because the immigration is interested in where you're from, who I am and where I am from. Only in that context, they're not really interested in what my real identity deeply is, or falsafa of zindagi,
what your perspectives
and lives are, etc.
Yes.
I did this as a little experiment in class once. I was unfortunately had to teach somewhere, and in the class of about 45 boys and girls, and I said, all right, we need to talk about identity, because we were making a presentation and I was teaching them how to make presentations, and I thought, somebody suggested let's make a presentation on the national identity. And so I said, all right, we'll do this, we'll divide this class. I won't tell you what the parameters are. I'll pick at random two names, a boy and a girl, stand them on either side, and then you guys go and talk to them, and if you identify with one or the other, then you stand near them, so it forms two groups, and I'm giving you only two choices. So you have to really, you may not identify with either, but you have to try and identify, because, and they said, well, that's a very limited choice. I said, you just gave me an even more limited one. You said, I have to identify national identity, which means one identity. I'm giving you a choice. And 15 minutes later, we had all the men on one side and all the women on the other. That was the most obvious identity.
Oh dear.
I mean, obviously identity, gender is one identity.
Of course.
Color is another, race is another, you know, a number of things. Race has even been proved to be false and politically motivated, but yet, because it exists on the name, therefore that's an identity.
That's an identity.
Language is another, you know, ethnicity is another, provincialism is another. So it really depends on where you're looking at identity. I mean,
as an identity, national identity, if we talk about it for a minute, as a Pakistani, at least in my lifetime, that's evolved several times.
it must.
And usually for the negative, not really for the positive. If we're talking about traveling internationally, going abroad, from, you know, when you're younger, I remember 17, 18, you know, if I ever went to the States, the UK was always better, but if I ever went to the States, I was asked, oh, am I part of India? So no one had an idea what Pakistan was. To then, you know, Musharraf's time, and somehow we started being liked. So, you know, it was like, oh yes, we know where you are, and oh yes, Musharraf's really good and all that. To now, you know, this fundamentalist country that I belong to, and how I surprise people because I'm wearing trousers and t-shirts and I speak fluent English. It's very confusing for the younger generations.
You know, you just actually made a very interesting point. All the examples you've given are not of your identity.
Or of my country's identity.
No, are of the identity that you are given by another person. Not the identity. None of it played in a part of what your identity was. It's what the Americans viewed you as.
Yes.
Or outside it. Because one of the problems with identity is that people have made it a virtue to be identity. Actually, identity is not about inclusion, not about finding your roots. It's about identifying and excluding the other. If I can identify you as an Indian, a Hindu, a black, you know, Caucasian or whatever, if I
brown,
can label
yellow.
brown, yellow, whatever, if I can label you, which means what I'm essentially saying is you're not one of us, then I can do unto you what the hell I feel like, because us will not be sympathetic towards you. That's the basic purpose. It's like class, which is one of the major identities. It's the upper class looking down upon the middle class, and the middle class looking down upon further on the lower class by creating one. By saying, well, you know, if we're looked down upon, we're not feeling superior to anybody, so let's look at somebody else, label them something, hate them, torture them, pillage them, murder them, rape them. No sympathy will ever come from you. You find this here. You look at religious minorities. One or two of them can be subjected to terror.
Terror, you're right.
You can look at India when it happens to the Muslims. In other cases.
And in recent times that all Muslims should leave India and move to Pakistan.
I mean, now, this is not an identity which every Indian is saying.
Exactly.
I mean, I go to India very regularly. I don't find this on the streets. But there is a whole Hindutva crowd, which is theoretically saying that our identity is Hindutva. Their identity is that we are not Hindu. And therefore the rest have to go. So that's the purpose. This identity ended when Bertrand Russell said, remember your humanity and forget the rest. That's the identity. It would have to go actually, in the future, it would have to be bigger. Right? We remember that you're a life form and forget the rest. Maybe.
Do you feel that, I mean, you know,
I strongly believe that. I mean, I really strongly, very strongly, cannot and not willing to be labelled for one identity. I've never felt that way. I mean, I can't understand something as tangible, that if I today have an identification as a Pakistani, and suppose I were to give up my nationality and go to America, and my identification would become, let's say I became a citizen, then my identification would be America. Has my identity changed?
Not at all.
You think my entire Zaheer Kidwainess depends on what color my passport is? No.
No, you're so right. It really does come down to that. Then why do we allow it to just take over?
It's so much easier.
Is that it? Is it just
so much
laziness?
It's empathy, laziness, not deep thinking, nothing else. I mean,